I like to say our location found us. We didn't decide it on our own. We are a community school model. It's in our name, and a community school model is an evidence-based model that is built with and for the community to kind of close community-identified needs and to remove some barriers. We heard really loudly and clearly from families who live in the Pearl Cone Whites Creek cluster area of Nashville that school options are not always accessible to them. So the community aspect of it was incredibly important and just really verified that this model is desired by a lot of families, and families would be really interested in enrolling their students in.
That's the voice of Meg Garry, founder and executive director of Encompass Community School, a K-8 innovative, mastery-based, student-centered public school serving families in North Nashville. Encompass will open its doors to families in fall of 2025, starting with grades K through 3 and building to 8th grade. Meg started her career as a high school algebra teacher and has served as a teacher and leader in schools in Mississippi, Connecticut, and Tennessee. In addition to the mastery-based approach, Encompass believes deeply in building partnerships with community-based organizations to provide wraparound support for students, families, and community members alike. My name is Scott Campbell, and I'm the Executive Director of the Nashville Incubator, and you're listening to Back to the Whiteboard, a podcast featuring conversations with innovative leaders in the education reform space. You can learn more about the Nashville Incubator and get involved at tnincubator.org. Well, I'm excited to have Meg Garry with me here today. Welcome, Meg.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
All right, so let's talk about Encompass. I would love to start by just asking a question I ask every founder, which is, what's the problem you're trying to solve by starting Encompass Community School?
Yeah, so Encompass is trying to directly solve the one-size-fits-all approach that our traditional school models take and that we have decided as a country is just the design of schools, where students receive instruction based on their age, and for the most part, those groups kind of stay. And within every classroom, we know that there is a range of learner needs. Learner variability is a real thing. We've got students who are ahead in some subjects and they might be behind in another subject. And while we have, as a country, as a state, as a city, a lot of initiatives to support students through enrichment and through intervention, there are still a lot of students who don't get exactly what they need. And it is not because those buildings are not full of great educators and great administrators. It is kind of the design of the system. And so throughout the founding journey, I was trying to understand and figure out who's thinking about school differently and who is looking at instructional design from a different lens of kind of equity and everyone getting what they need when they need it for as long as they need it. And so Encompass really is trying to embody a new way of learning, which we call mastery-based learning, where students are grouped based on their exact individual needs in each subject area. And through our really robust instructional design, the model is meant to catch kids up, get them ahead, and make sure that they are constantly grouped based on their exact needs through ongoing data monitoring and systems. And so, yeah, we're trying to just create a school where no kid is left behind, and also the kids who are ahead of the game have opportunities to dig deeper and to engage in more real-life application problem solving and don't have to sit in class bored.
I'm very excited about your model. I know Nashville is obviously very excited about your model. I mean, what inspired you in your personal experiences to say, okay, this is the approach that we need to take in designing this school?
Yeah. So as a former administrator, I was responsible for overseeing all of the intervention and the enrichment at a school here in Nashville, and was really sometimes frustrated with, we knew a kid needed more than we were able to offer, but the predetermined schedule, this is the intervention block or this is the enrichment block, saw for some students that it wasn't enough. And so year over year, while kids were growing, they weren't growing faster than their peers. So it's like, if you and I are running a race and you're running faster than me, I can't run at the same speed as you. I have to run faster than you to even catch up. And so we can think about academic growth in the same way of kids need to be growing more than a school year if they are behind. And having intervention blocks that are, 30 or 40 minutes a day without really intentional analysis around what are the key foundational skills that a kid is missing really prevents that acceleration from happening. And I also was the individual who supported students who might have had varying needs for behavior and social emotional needs. And one of the first things that we would always look at is there an instructional match? Like, is the kid in the class, are they learning within their zone of proximal development? Are they ready for that? Or are they bored, or is it too rigorous? And I would say 8 out of 10 times it was largely there was a mismatch, and you can't write a behavior plan to support that. And so instead, kids are sitting in classrooms where they've already learned it, or they're not ready to learn it yet, and we're kind of, for lack of a better phrase, we're wasting their time, and they're just kind of moving through the system. And, once they're at a certain level, it's almost impossible to catch them up because you can't stop time. Time still goes. Like, kids still have to learn these set standards. And so really started to think about how can we figure out a different way within, state laws and federal guidelines to redesign a kid's day, and what were our intentionality behind that instructional design of how and what we are teaching students was really I think the journey that I've been on is trying to solve for making a model that's more responsive and flexible and doesn't wait weeks or a quarter or a year to make that instructional change for a child.
I mean, it's so interesting because what you said here is we like to sometimes solve problems of students being behind by, you mentioned this RTI or this response intervention, these short intervention blocks that they might have 30 minutes or 45 minutes, or we add on, an additional tutoring or support that might happen after school or one-on-one time with the teacher. And you're trying to sort of blow that up a little bit and say, we're just going to come up with a new structure
yes.
to what classes students are actually in, and then what they're learning and how they're learning in those individual classes. And so my understanding of this is that a student could be 7 years old and another student could be 11 years old, and yet they're in the exact same classroom learning English language instruction. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. I think the best way to think about it is, for anyone who's familiar with response to intervention at the tier 2 and the tier 3 level, those same principles are the exact principles that we're applying at the tier 1 level, where it's flexible student groupings, small group instruction, using direct instruction, and really creating a robust system of monitoring data on a regular basis. And so we're taking those same evidence-based practices, best practices that we know at the intervention level, and applying them in the tier 1 setting.
But they might be in a classroom for English instruction with other students varying age, but then math, they might be with all students their own ages, right? So it could just differ based off subject area. So you're really using data to truly inform not just instruction, but every single day what classroom they're going to be in and how they're being supported.
Yeah, totally. Exactly.
That's really exciting. This is a very innovative approach, right, to what's currently exists in Nashville, but I know it's not actually something that you've created from scratch from your own brain.
Thank goodness.
But something that you've learned over time. And there's a Morningside model of generative instruction is sort of what you're basing this model on. Can you tell me more about that? And how did you learn about this? And how did you learn how to do this work this way?
Yeah. So the Morningside model of generative instruction, or MMGI, is the foundation of our entire school model. And so Morningside Academy, they are the creators of this instructional design. It is a private school that's out in Seattle, and it's been around for about 40 plus years. The school was opened in the 1980s, and they operate with kind of 5 principles around students are grouped with similar needs. You provide direct instruction. You're really intentional about the curricular materials that you're putting in front of students. A big piece of the model that we haven't touched on yet is this idea of kids practicing foundational skills to fluency. And so there's an incredible emphasis on the model of this system of measurement, I'll call it, called precision teaching, where students are fluently practicing a subset skill until they reach a certain 10 math facts per minute. There's a certain threshold that Morningside, over 40 plus years of research, have kind of determined. And then the final piece of the model is this idea of generative instruction. It is, we cannot teach kids everything that they need to know, but what we can do is teach them these foundational core skills and then contrive situations where kids are generating their own understanding and their own learning. And it's like you're building the foundation of a house, and the kids are working to build the sides of the house and the roof. And sometimes what education can do is they can expect kids to build that roof first. And it's like, you can't build a roof without the sides of a house, without a solid foundation. And so the Morningside model really flips that on its head and relies heavily on student proficiency and fluency at the core level. And the one thing that I love about the model is that we are creating situations where kids have accessible access to rigor. It's not just rigor for rigor's sake. It is, I know that I'm going to ask you to do this, fraction word problem, and you have the fluent skills to read it. You can comprehend what you're reading. You know how to compute and manipulate fractions. And so I actually don't have to teach you how to do this word problem. You have all 4 of these foundational skills of how to problem solve. And so now you are going to engage in that generative thinking on your own and apply what you know and be successful at that problem. And the wonderful thing about Morningside is, they are this lab school. So they, year over year, are constantly innovating and are constantly developing new instructional strategies based on their own outcomes, based on new research that is emerging within the field, and testing it out themselves. And they have replicated 140 plus settings, community colleges, prisons, jails, summer schools, like rural, suburban, Indian reservations, to kind of show these principles can be applied in any setting, and the majority of our population, cognitively, is able to achieve on grade level. It is all about the mechanics in which we get them there. And they offer this, they call it Morningside Teachers Academy, every summer. You can go out to Seattle, teach there. You teach in the morning in their summer school, and then in the afternoon, they teach you just the conceptual underpinnings of their model to figure out how they can disseminate this, because they're not in the business of telling, going around and opening a bunch of schools. They want people who are working in institutions to come learn and to be the ones in charge of doing it, which is incredibly exciting. And so we're honored and thrilled to have a 3-year partnership with Morningside for the first 3 years of operation, where they will support us in implementing phases of the model and supporting the coaching of our teachers and the coaching of our leaders for them to be able to leave us after 3 years and do this work on our own.
As a former instructor and teacher myself and administrator, one of the things that I always found was it was challenging to differentiate up or support those students who had already sort of met the standard that you were trying to put before them before you even started teaching it. So how do we keep pushing these students forward? So what sounds really exciting about this generative instruction is that this can respond to that and be able to support those students as well. Yeah, definitely. And Morningside has this kind of saying, it's their model's all about catching them up and getting them ahead. And I think we, as a nation, we respond really heavily, as we should, to the academic proficiencies across the board. And the students who are ahead on grade level or ahead can sometimes be an afterthought. And what's beautiful about this model is that by design, organically, every kid is getting exactly what they needed just by the flexible student groupings of students being grouped based on exactly what they need. So model is obviously core to this, but I know that place is really important to you as well. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit about where you're locating the school and why, and kind of other aspects. So you have 2 sort of big components of the school, one being this competency-based approach, but the second is really about community. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the journey of figuring out, this is a model we think that everybody should be, and you can, if you've got a niche and a specific mission, we think you can adopt this model, but trying to figure out where and what community would be really interested in it. We went from like South Nashville to Central Nashville, like just trying to navigate that. And really what has determined our location is like families. I like to say like our location found us. We didn't decide it on our own. And we, at our core, are a community school model. It's in our name, and a community school model is an evidence-based model that is built with and for the community to kind of close community-identified needs and to remove some barriers. And so through talking with families, we heard really loudly and clearly from families who live in the Pearl Cone, Whites Creek cluster area of Nashville that school options are not always accessible to them. That part of our city has a really high opt-out rate of enrollment. About 50 to 67% of families choose options outside of their community, and often those families are choosing those options at great lengths. Like if you look at a map and you look at choice options, South Nashville has a lot of amazing, diverse, innovative models, same with East Nashville. And if you zoom in on the part of the city that we're opening in, options are really limited. And so through our just intense and community engagement, I mean, we've knocked on over 1,000 doors at this point, have surveyed 900 parents, and they have said very clearly, like, just having the option of more schools that are located within their neighborhood that they don't have to travel, across the city to access is incredibly important. And also through that work, a lot of families are eager to have a school that offers tutoring or offers one-on-one support. And if you work in education, you know that one-on-one support is really intense and difficult to give from a staffing perspective. And so the one thing that was really clear is that our model just organically meets those needs of being able to provide that personalized support for students. Tutoring isn't always accessible to families. It can come at a high cost. It requires families to seek these services outside of school. And so the community aspect of it was incredibly important and just really verified that this model is desired by a lot of families, and families would be really interested in enrolling their students in.
And you've done a great job of creating really deep relationships with a lot of community-based organizations and nonprofits that are already serving in that community. Can you tell me more about that and sort of why? Why, as a school, when you think about sort of wraparound or community supports for all of your students, have you decided not to do it all yourself, but really work with the folks in the community?
Yeah. So as your first question was like, what problem were we trying to solve? We were trying to solve this problem around the design of schools. And while we think it is a problem to solve, it is incredibly important that is a problem that community members, organizations who live in that community, who do wonderful work in that community, and families also equally felt that was a problem to solve. And we are a school, so we're going to be really good at instruction. We're going to be really good at teaching and learning, and we also can't do it all ourselves. And so the community school model really allows for the opportunity to kind of elevate and to partner with organizations who have expertise in areas such as mental health and wellness, bringing in partners who can provide opportunities for families to do job training, build their resume, practice interview skills, to just really create a robust system where it's kind of like a one-stop shop and families can access a hub of resources that help not just their child, but their family as a whole. And you really, by wrapping your arms around the whole family, are creating those lifelong partnerships and continuous engagement that really, I think, is the mission of a community school. Is you are seen as this hub of resources and support. And there will be a lot of areas that we cannot do, but we can leverage these partnerships that we have been able to build over the last year and a half to kind of let them shine and let them do their thing, that they might not be known in the community as well.
So great. What other inspirations, what has inspired either you personally or the design and the model of your school to build it the way that you're building it?
Yeah. So I think it is that it has never been about me, and that it has always been about I'm a firm believer in if you're going to decide to do something new and you're going to create something, especially something that takes up physical space and you are asking people to pour into, that partnership and the individuals at the table who have their voices heard just has to be a priority and has to be number one, or else that's just an idea and that's a cool thing that you're doing, but is it sustainable? Will people continue to come to your thing, whatever it is that you're trying to do? And are you going to be able to become a pillar within the community? And so the inspiration really comes out of like asking parents, what do they want? There's this amazing book called Street Data that I recommend anybody read. And it is an incredibly important take of just how we interpret and view our data set. So it's like thinking about, a satellite view. Anyone can look at a data set and be like, oh my gosh, American education, like we need to do something different. And what often happens is that, well, one, those data sets are comprised of people. Those are families. Those are experiences. They're living this data every single day. And what can often happen is like there's not a lot of outlet to be able to get individualized experiences from a qualitative set. And so that book and just the idea of like always balancing quantitative and qualitative data like led the charge of making sure that anything that we are doing and any data set that we are responding to, we are digging deeper into understanding what are these exact experiences of the people who represent this data. Because if we're coming in here and we're saying like, this is our idea, y'all get on board with it. Yeah. No, who are you all? And so we, all of our work, the first question we would ask parents is like, what is your dream school? And like people, they dreamed big. Like we heard so many different amazing ideas. And that was like such a gateway into understanding their individual experiences. And, we won't be able to do everything all at once in the first year, but to understand what is important to families, what barriers they've experienced, and what they're looking for in school was such an important eye-opening experience, and just is central to our model, our staffing, our systems to be able to continue to open, launch, and sustain as a community school. And that will evolve over time. It's all about just being responsive, which I think is such a value of our academic model. It makes sense that we are responsive to our parents and our community from a design perspective as well.
I love that connection. And it's so important, and this just so aligns with a lot of the other conversations I've had with other guests here around how do we think about not just what we think might work, working with and not for or to a community or a group of people is so important. So thank you for listening, which is sometimes rare in education, believe it or not. You're going to be opening this fall. This would be fall of 2025. And you have grades K through 3 in your very first year. And there's a lot of buzz and excitement and families who are really excited about being in your school. If you could paint me a verbal picture of walking down the hallway with you, opening up a door and looking in one of the classrooms, what will we see when we walk through a classroom of Encompass this fall?
Yeah, so you will see in a classroom 2 different small groups likely happening at the same exact time, and with 2 teachers kind of leading that. I think for, some of those groups during our personalized learning block, you'll see students who are engaged in work that might not match up with what grade they're in, but is very individualized to exactly what they need. And a huge part of the model is this practice of peer coaching. And I actually did it in a pilot program that I ran prior to applying to open the school. Is students are owning their learning. They are incredibly clear at what they're working on, why they're working on it, and what their goals are and how to get there. And walking through the school and walking through classrooms and hallways, you will see students taking ownership for their growth. You'll see students taking ownership for bouncing back when they don't meet their goal, and then also giving feedback to their peers around the precision teaching I mentioned earlier tends to take place in groups of 2, where one student is the learner, the other student is kind of the timer, and they facilitate the student doing the practice, check their work off, give give them feedback, hey, your goal was 15 per minute. You only got 14. That's okay. Let's look at this error rate here. And so that I was very present in our model of just students being in charge of their own data and their own growth, which is incredibly exciting. And then the other small group of what you'll see is that is where the teachers will be leading instruction for grade level standards to make sure that they're getting access to state standards. And so a big part of the Morningside model is just constant opportunities to respond, like students getting at least like 10 to 20 bats per minute through whether that's choral responding, through fluency timings of ensuring that students are mastering the skill in instruction before they go to independent practice. Morningside has this saying where it is discrimination before operation. We want to know that you know what you are about to go do during independent practice so that your practice is incredibly meaningful, that you're not sitting there trying to figure out what your teacher just taught you. You are sitting there getting to actually practice and build that fluency. Sometimes in typical schools, you're following a time-based schedule where my instruction is 20 minutes. Now I'm going to do a group practice, and that's 10 minutes, and independent practice is 15 minutes. In the Morningside model, it is a recursive nonlinear dance where it is like you are constantly responding to what's happening in the environment. And so in an Encompass classroom, you'll see teachers making in-the-moment decisions based on exactly what students are saying and doing, and making a decision, I need to go back and do an example. We're not ready for independent practice, or you three are ready. Let me go ahead and go back to this example here. So yeah, I think those are like the big cornerstones that you'll see at an Encompass school. And the other piece I think is something you'll feel, which is just a sense of belonging and joy and deep engagement in learning, especially for students who have been unsuccessful at school. They can come, to school daily. This is something I have to do. I don't like this. I'm not successful. Every kid wants to learn. Every kid wants to be successful, but it is really hard to be successful in an environment that's not set up or built for you. And so you'll see a lot of students who are just excited about doing more timings. They want to get better. They want to reach their goal. And then I would say the other thing that you would see and feel and hear is just students being one community. I mean, and in our school, all means all. Everybody is included. And that also means when we have problems, there's going to be conflict. Conflict happens, but it is the way that we respond and react to that and restore the environment to make sure that we're holding ourselves accountable, apologizing when needing, and then repairing those relationships to kind of move on. Restorative practice is a huge part of our model of making sure that students have the opportunity to make mistakes and then to also correct and learn from them to kind of move forward and building intrinsic motivation of being a part of the community.
I can't wait to walk down the hallway with you and see these things. We're only a few months away.
Yes.
The year of founding a school, it's so much doing. And it's very easy to get caught up in that. What are you hoping to learn this year outside of, like how to get, bus schedule or lunches served or those types of things? What personally are you hoping to learn in this process?
Oh, wow. That's a really good question. I think that one thing I am still learning is, and hope to continue to codify, is the best way to invite people into the model and to share the mission of the school. The Morningside model of generative instruction is probably something nobody has heard of prior to listening to this. And so it can be challenging to explain what it is, especially if you can't fully access some of the technical terms or you haven't worked in a school before. And so I would say, continuing to understand from a parent lens of how to best invite people in to kind of experience it and to understand it and to be able to then explain it to other people. I know that's probably a weird thing to say, but it's something that we're, once we click it and we see a light bulb go off in parents' faces, they're like, oh my gosh, why aren't schools doing this? I wish I had that when I was their age. And it's continuing to give that, again, access to being able to talk about the model in a way that feels really comfortable, because I think the more that you understand it, the more it's like, oh, duh, why aren't we doing that already? And families just get really excited about it. And if a family is like, actually, my kid doesn't need that, but I do know my 4 neighbors are looking for something, like to be able to just explain it to them in a way that's accessible and they can understand it in a way, because we don't get to rely on like the other types of schools that exist that are very well known, like a Montessori school, like very clear of what that is. The mastery-based learning is still something that is making its way into the ed space.
I don't think that sounds weird at
Okay.
all. I think that is actually what all teachers are called to do. Take something complex and make it simple.
Yes.
And the best way to do that is through experience. A lot. Very exciting. And I know there's a lot of people who are excited about the work you've already done and the work that you will do in this community for years to come. If people want to get connected with you or find out more, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, so you can visit our website, encompassnashville.org, and you can also follow us on social media, Encompass Community School. We're on LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. And our website has a lot of information about how to contact us. It has our number, our email on there. You can text, you can call us. And if you're interested in learning more, we have an interest enrollment form on there, and we would be happy to sit down. And we like to say it, show the model in action, which is exciting. So yeah, encompassnashville.org.
Well, I've said it to you, and now I say it to you through a mic, which is a lot of people are building schools. You're building a community, and it's really exciting to see.
You.
And I can't wait to be part of and see Encompass this fall. So thank you. Thanks for spending some time with me today.
Yes, thank you so much, Scott.
Thanks for listening to Back to the Whiteboard, powered by the Nashville Incubator. Learn how you can get involved in helping us reform education at tnincubator.org. And if you like this episode, please follow, rate, and review this show wherever you listen to your favorite podcast.